as we move to a world where deliverable outcomes are more common, more accepted, more analysed, they have their place. They're not the be all and end all, but they're a more kind of recognised part of the service delivery mix. What do you think the implications are from a negotiation point of view, both on the buyer and the seller angle with that?
So I think if I look at it from the seller angle, first of all, I think, my advice to sellers who are going through that more accountability, much more focused on outputs and outcomes is, when you're negotiating the contract, I just did a survey on LinkedIn, in fact. I asked a question, what's most important to you? Discounting on the so in the negotiation, is it more important that you don't discount too heavily? Is it more important that you get less than 30, that you get payment terms better than 30 days? Is it more important that you get long-term contracts? Or is it more important that you can hit the KPIs? A majority of people are saying the KPIs are really important, because if you set the bar too high, we're never going to perform to the expected level, and it's going to cost us more money. I think as a negotiator, if I'm looking at all my negotiation variables, and those are just 4, what I'd be doing as a seller is going, we've got to nail the scope down really tightly. We've got to agree what constitutes a variation to contract. Because if you don't define what determines a variation, the slow dripping tap of could you just means that you'll never make any money and you'll fail to deliver against expectations. And then thirdly, when you're defining the SLAs, what goes into that SLA? I've seen them where there's been 30 KPIs. It's impossible to manage, impossible. 5 good, strong KPIs with reasonable targets that you've got to hit. And then what's the outperform and the underperform thresholds? Thinking those through carefully. And when you do that, any supplier, no matter what sector you're in, bring in the delivery manager at the time you're negotiating those KPIs, because they're going to have to hold them and deliver to them. Too often I see as a seller, a salesperson negotiates the KPIs. It then gets signed off and handed to delivery, and delivery go, well, I can't achieve this. And sales go, well, but that's what I could get over the line. That's what they wanted. So I think as a negotiation preparation, sit down, think it through, think through the variables, think through those aspects of the contract I just talked about, and propose something to your buyer. So in anchoring terms, I'd go in strong with an anchor first of all, and I'd set the level against all those negotiating variables. And then I'd move them around like you would a mixing desk. So if the buyer wants a bit more off the price, well, then we're going to have to change the scope, or change the KPIs, or change the payment terms. And that's a negotiation where it's a more evolved, much more considered negotiation.
Yeah, and I think it's, with the right preparation, sellers are going to be able to see when a deal is not going to be worth them doing.
Correct.
And people have to be conscious of the fact that not all business is good business.
And the confidence to walk away. Yeah. The confidence to say, this isn't for us. Because what I think sellers often, and I've been there as a salesperson, you get nervous of losing the deal.
Yeah.
But the reality is, as a buyer's going down that track, there is a bit of a power shift goes on, is that if I really do want you to do this piece of work and we've spent some time on it, I don't want the deal to fall apart.
No.
So saying no is fine, as long as you've got justification, and we'll find a way around it. I'm not just going to walk away. So again, the supplier's got to know, it's like, no, we've got red lines and you've just crossed one. We can't do that. It won't work for us. And here's why. And if ultimately you get a very aggressive buyer, just have the strength to walk away and say, it's not for us. We've got other deals we want to do instead that are better for us as an organization. We don't think we'll be able to deliver against your expectations. We're going to walk away.
And so effectively working to very clear outcomes and including that and making sure the scope is very clear. In theory, that should allow for a better outcome on both sides.
Definitely.
But it has to be dealt with properly, with preparation and structure, and it can't be woolly. Of course, there's always going to be certain unknowns, but within reason. I think as a buyer, from my point of view, as a buyer, if someone comes to me and they've really thought it through and they've got reasons why something's going to impinge the delivery of what I want to get done, I'm going to take that very seriously. I'm going to have a lot of credibility. They're going to gain a lot of credibility in my mind. What about, so when you're looking at this shift towards more structured outcome-based delivery, and if procurement have got more visibility of services that they're procuring under a statement of work, how do you see that negotiation from that buyer angle?
So from the buyer, I mean, the system is an enabler. So I think it's going to empower me. One of the things that often I think people, they don't forget, but they overlook in the negotiation is when the contract's done, the negotiation's not over. Because what happens is I should be doing QBRs. So on a big contract, I'd expect to do a quarterly business review with the supplier, with the budget holder, and me, and going through what's happened and what happens next. Because I set the KPIs with the supplier during the contracting stage. But a quarter into delivery, I need a system that tells me whether it's on track or not. And if it fails on one of the KPIs in one of the quarterly reviews, it's visible to me. I can see it coming. And then I can start to talk to the vendor about, budget holder, we're going to have a separate conversation now. This is about contractually, you've not done what you said you'd do. You can miss the one KPI for one quarter, but if you miss it again the next quarter, there'll be a service credit or there'll be a change in the payment structure, or there'll be a rebate. So I think it really empowers me as a buyer to be much more structured. It makes me more efficient. And it also, as long as the vendor knows that's what's going to happen, it makes the vendor much sharper. Because if it's real-time reporting, you should be able to see it coming. Whereas I see a lot of QBRs, you get there, the vendor turns up and goes, ta-da, here's what we did. And I go, that's not what I've got. My report says this, and yours says that. Who do I believe now? Whereas if you've got one view of the truth, a golden source, as I used to call it, you're in much better shape.